Have you ever woken up one morning after retirement and felt empty? Not the kind of peaceful quiet you imagined, but a hollow space inside you that you just can't shake. I've been there myself. Believe me, I thought that finally stepping away from the rush, the deadlines, and the endless to-do lists would bring relief. Instead, it left me wondering, what now? Who am I without all that? It's a quiet struggle many older women face but rarely talk about. I want you to know this isn't a problem without a solution. There are gentle, simple ways to reclaim that sense of purpose and fill your days with meaning again. No complicated plans or big changes needed. What helped me wasn't chasing after more. It was learning to embrace stillness, to find joy in moments I'd overlooked for years. In this video, I'm going to share 5 heartfelt steps that help me rediscover peace and purpose after retirement. Steps that any woman over 60 can take starting today. These aren't just tips. They're little keys to unlocking a deeper happiness you might not expect. So, if you're feeling a bit lost or disconnected right now, just remember, you deserve to live a rich, fulfilling life. What's one small moment lately that made you feel truly alive? I'd love to hear your story as we take this journey together. If you are not subscribed, subscribe and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. If you like the topic of this video, please comment 1. Now, let's begin. Section 1. The car that didn't fix anything. It's funny, the things we think will make us happy after we retire. For decades, I'd convinced myself that life would finally begin when I had more time, when I didn't have to punch a clock, and when I could do what I pleased. And like a lot of people, I carried around a quiet list of things I'd treat myself to once the grind was over. Topping that list, believe it or not, was a shiny new truck. Maybe it sounds silly, but there was a logic to it. For years, my car had just been, well, a car. Reliable, but tired. The kind of sedan that blended into the grocery store parking lot, where the air conditioner was always a little too loud and the seats sagged with time and use. I told myself I was being frugal, that I was saving for the future. But secretly, every time I drove past a dealership and caught the glint of chrome, I pictured myself behind the wheel, free at last, windows down, music playing, riding off into a brand new chapter of my life. So, not long after my retirement party, after the cake was eaten and the well wishes faded into polite memory, I did it. I walked into the dealership, my heart pounding with a mix of excitement and nervousness. There it was, a midnight blue truck, polished so brightly the overhead lights danced on its surface. I ran my hand along the side, feeling the cold metal and the promise of something new. The sales guy talked about horsepower and leather seats, but I barely listened. I was thinking about how it would feel to finally drive away in something that was all mine, earned after decades of hard work. The paperwork was a blur. I remember signing my name so many times that my hand was cramped, but I didn't care. The keys jingled in my palm as I walked out, a sound that felt like victory. I slipped into the seat, breathing in that unmistakable new car smell, the scent of achievement, or so I thought. I started the engine, the dashboard lighting up like a small celebration, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a little thrill in my chest. The first week, I was like a kid with a new toy. I found excuses to drive everywhere. Suddenly, I remembered a hardware store across town that I needed to visit. I took the long way to the grocery store, cruising around the old neighborhood just to see how the sun glinted off the hood. I parked as far from the entrance as I could, just so I could walk back and admire it for a few extra seconds. Friends and neighbors noticed, too. "Nice ride," they'd call out. I'd grin, feeling that flush of pride, that little lift that comes from being noticed for something shiny and new. But something odd started happening after a couple of weeks. The sparkle began to fade, not on the truck, but inside me. At first, I didn't want to admit it. I kept finding reasons to drive, but the routes grew shorter, and the thrill started wearing thin. I'd sit behind the wheel, engine idling, and catch myself staring at the dashboard, feeling a strange hollowness settle in my chest. One afternoon, I came home from a drive with no particular purpose, parked in the garage, and just sat there in the quiet, the sunlight slanting through the windshield, dust motes dancing in the stillness. That's when the question snuck up on me, soft at first, then sharp and insistent. Is this it? I'd spent years daydreaming about this moment, believing a new truck would mark some new beginning. And now, sitting in that state-of-the-art cabin, I realized I felt more lost than ever. The seat was comfortable, the sound system crisp, the chrome gleamed, but none of it filled the ache I hadn't wanted to name. It was as if I'd bought the dream of happiness, only to find the box empty. The days went on. The compliments tapered off. The new car smell began to mingle with the faint aroma of takeout and grocery bags. The truck became, little by little, just another vehicle. Reliable, yes, but not magical. I caught myself driving less, letting it sit in the driveway while I stayed inside, moving from room to room with a restlessness I couldn't explain. Sometimes, I'd glance out the window and see the truck sitting there, shiny and silent, and feel a pang of regret, not for the money spent, but for the hope I'd pinned to its hood. Looking back now, it's clear what was happening. I'd spent so many years measuring my days in accomplishments and milestones, raises, promotions, awards, mortgage payments made, problems solved. Each new achievement was a rung on a ladder that seemed to stretch forever upward. Retirement, I thought, would be the grand finale, the well-deserved reward at the end of the climb. But what no one told me was how disorienting it is to stop climbing, to find yourself at the top, or at least off the ladder, and not know what to do with your hands or your heart. For a while, I tried to fill that space with things. The truck was just the biggest, most obvious example. I bought new clothes, redecorated the living room, and even subscribed to a couple of hobby magazines I'd never really had time to read before. None of it worked. The emptiness lingered, a quiet ache that showed up in the pauses between errands and appointments. I tried to convince myself it was just an adjustment period, that soon enough I'd feel retired in the way it looks in the commercials. Golf courses, grandkids, endless smiles. But the truth was, the harder I tried to fill the void, the deeper it seemed to get. The truck didn't give me purpose. It gave me distraction, temporary, fleeting. I'd spent so much time chasing the next thing that I'd forgotten how to be still, how to simply be with myself when there was nothing left to accomplish. The sound of the engine revving couldn't drown out the questions swirling in my mind. Who am I if I'm not working? What's my role now if no one needs me to fix, to build, to provide? One afternoon, I found myself standing in the garage, looking at the truck, my hand resting on the hood. I realized I wasn't angry or disappointed. I wasn't even embarrassed. I was just sad. Not for the truck, but for all the years I'd measured my worth by how much I could achieve, accumulate, and upgrade. I thought of all the hours spent working overtime, all the family dinners missed, all the little sacrifices made in the name of getting ahead. What did it amount to, in the end? A garage full of nice things, a mind full of restless questions. But here's where the story turns. Because in that sadness, something gentle began to grow, a kind of humility and acceptance. I started to see the truck not as a failure, but as a teacher. It showed me, in no uncertain terms, that happiness couldn't be bought or driven or parked in the driveway. It had to be found somewhere quieter, somewhere closer to the heart. Gradually, I started letting go of the idea that I needed something new to feel complete. I stopped browsing dealership websites late at night. I stopped making mental lists of what I'd buy next. Instead, I found myself drawn to the ordinary rhythms of the day, the warmth of the morning sun coming through the kitchen window, the sound of birds outside, the simple pleasure of brewing a pot of coffee and drinking it slowly. These were moments I'd overlooked for years, too busy rushing from one obligation to the next. There was a freedom in slowing down, in no longer chasing after the next big thing. The truck still sits in my garage. It's a good vehicle, reliable, comfortable, useful. But it's no longer a symbol of arrival or proof of success. It's just a truck, a tool for getting where I need to go. The real journey, I've learned, is happening inside me. It's in the quiet mornings, the unhurried afternoons, the chance to sit with a friend and share a story, or to watch my grandson laugh in the backyard. If I could go back and give myself advice, I'd say this: you are not what you own. You are not the sum of your achievements or your possessions. You are the person who has weathered storms, loved deeply, and kept moving forward, even when the road was uncertain. Retirement isn't a finish line or a reward for good behavior. It's a new chapter, a chance to learn, perhaps for the first time, how to be truly present. So if you're reading this and feeling that same emptiness, that quiet ache for something more, know that you're not alone. Many of us have stood in the garage, metaphorically or literally, staring at the thing we thought would make us whole, only to find it wasn't enough. The gift is in the realization that enough isn't out there in the world. It's inside us, waiting to be noticed. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. The car didn't fix anything for me, but the journey I've taken since, the journey inward, has given me something I never expected: peace, patience, and a growing appreciation for the beauty of ordinary days. That's the kind of fulfillment no machine, no matter how shiny or powerful, can ever provide. Section 2. The 5-minute morning that changed my day. It started, as so many changes do, in the most ordinary way. A morning that was just like every other morning, except for one tiny choice. You see, when I first retired, I thought my biggest adjustment would be filling the time. Turns out, it wasn't time I struggled with. It was the noise. Not the noise of traffic or busy offices, but the noise of my habits. The television, the phone, the relentless urge to always be doing something. For decades, I had a morning routine. You probably know the drill. Wake up, shuffle to the kitchen, make a cup of coffee. Back when I was working, I'd gulp that first mug half awake, mind already running through the day's to-do list. Even after I retired, I kept the old pattern. I'd grab the remote and turn on the news, filling my quiet kitchen with updates about all the things that were wrong in the world. It was habit. It felt productive, at least, that's what I told myself. I thought I needed to stay informed. But honestly, it was just background noise, a way to fill the silence that made me uneasy. Then, one Tuesday, nothing remarkable about it, I made my coffee and reached for the remote. My hand stopped in midair. For reasons I couldn't explain, I just didn't want to do it. I stood there, mug in hand, feeling the warmth seep into my fingers, and the strangest thought popped into my head. What if I just sat? No TV, no phone, no headlines, no scrolling. Just me, my coffee, and the morning. It felt awkward at first, I won't lie. My mind kept nudging me. Shouldn't I check the weather, the markets, the emails? Shouldn't I be doing something? I sat anyway. I pulled out a kitchen chair, set my coffee down, and let myself be still. The house was quiet in a way I hadn't noticed in years. There was the low hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the old wall clock, and the gentle sound of my dog snoring on the rug. Sunlight slipped through the blinds, painting stripes of gold across the table. For once, nothing was demanding my attention. No boss, no kids, not even my anxious thoughts. Just quiet. At first, I fidgeted. I glanced around, hands restless. I thought about checking my phone, just to see what I might be missing. But after a minute or two, I let go. My shoulders dropped. My breathing slowed. I listened to the birds outside, different voices layered in the trees, some sharp, some soft, an easy conversation in a language I'd forgotten how to hear. I watched the steam curling up from my coffee and realized I hadn't noticed that in ages. A memory surfaced from years ago, summer visits to my grandparents' farmhouse. I remember waking up to the sound of chickens and my grandmother humming in the kitchen, the comfort of those slow, simple mornings before the world got noisy. Back then, time felt stretchy, soft, and forgiving. No rush. Just the smell of bacon, the clink of a spoon in a mug, the promise of a day that didn't need to be filled with anything special to feel worthwhile. I hadn't felt that in a long, long time. That morning, I just sat. 5 minutes, maybe 6. Not meditating, not planning, not even reflecting. Just being. At first, it didn't seem like much. But as the day unfolded, something was different. My mind wasn't spinning at its usual speed. I didn't feel the pressure to get to the next thing, to fill every space. I moved through the day with a kind of ease I hadn't known in years. Little annoyances, a slow driver, a misplaced receipt, a forgotten errand, just didn't seem to stick. I noticed the taste of my lunch, the way sunlight danced on the living room floor, and the comfort of my dog's head in my lap. I even caught myself smiling for no reason at all. The next morning, curiosity got the better of me. I wondered if it had just been a fluke, so I tried it again. I made my coffee, skipped the remote, and sat. The awkwardness was still there, but it faded quicker this time. I listened. I looked. I let myself notice. And again, the quiet stayed with me all day. Not an empty quiet, but a steady one, like a thread holding me together. Days turned into weeks, and this tiny ritual became my anchor. 5 minutes. That's all it took. Some mornings, I still felt the urge to fill the silence, to reach for my phone, to let the news pour in. But most days, I just sat and let the world arrive slowly. I began to see these 5 minutes as a kind of gift, a pocket of peace that belonged only to me. What surprised me most was how much more alive I felt, how much more I noticed in my own home, my own body, and my mind. The way the morning air changed with the seasons, the pattern of leaves shifting outside my window, the familiar but often overlooked rhythms of a life lived quietly. Even my memories became sharper and more vivid. I remembered old friends, past summers, and the feeling of grass under bare feet. I remembered who I was before the world taught me to be busy all the time. Sometimes, I'd catch myself worrying that I was wasting time. But then I'd realize that I'd spent so many years rushing, multitasking, measuring my worth in tasks completed and goals achieved. What had that ever truly brought me? Tiredness, sure. Anxiety, plenty of that. But real contentment. It always seemed just out of reach, always dependent on what I would do next, achieve next, become next. After 5 quiet minutes, I began to understand what my heart had been trying to say for years. There's nothing to prove. No race to win. No one is keeping score. Presence, simple, honest presence, was what I'd been craving all along. It was never about the news, or the emails, or the next thing on the list. It was about showing up fully for the life I already had. The benefits started to ripple outward. I found myself more patient, not just with others, but with myself. When a friend called to vent, I listened more deeply, less distracted. When my grandson wanted to show me a drawing, I didn't rush him along or sneak a look at my phone. I was there. The world felt richer, more colorful, and more connected. On days when life was hard, bad news, aches and pains, worries about family, those 5 minutes became my refuge. They reminded me that no matter what storms came, I could find a quiet center inside myself. Sometimes I'd just close my eyes and breathe, counting the sound of my breath, letting go of everything I couldn't control. Sometimes I'd let memories rise, good ones and painful ones, and let them drift away on their own time. I didn't need to fix anything. I just needed to be. I began to share this practice with friends, some skeptical, some eager. 5 minutes. One laughed. That's nothing. But for many, it became a lifeline, a pause in the middle of too much noise, too many expectations, too much grief or loneliness or uncertainty. We started calling each other to check in. Did you take your 5 this morning? And the answer, more and more, was yes. Looking back, I wish someone had told me sooner that the greatest treasures in life aren't found by doing more or having more, but by simply noticing more. The taste of hot coffee, the warmth of sunlight, the soft breathing of someone you love is asleep beside you. I used to think the world would stop if I did. But the world keeps turning, and somehow by slowing down, I'm able to enjoy it more than ever. I know that for many of us, especially after 65, the idea of slowing down can feel a little frightening. Maybe you worry you'll feel useless, invisible, or left behind. Maybe you're haunted by regrets or aches that won't go away. Maybe you simply don't know what to do with yourself after a lifetime of purpose measured by productivity. But I promise you, the 5 minutes you give yourself are not wasted. They are a gentle rebellion against the pressure to always be busy. They are an act of self-kindness, a way of reminding yourself that you're still here, still worthy, still alive. No matter what the world says about age usefulness or speed. So tomorrow morning, when you wake up, I invite you to try it. Skip the news. Ignore the phone. Just make your coffee, sit in your favorite chair, and let the day come to you, gently. Listen to the sounds of your own home. Watch the light change. Let your mind rest. You don't need to solve anything. You don't need to achieve anything. Just let yourself be. You might be surprised, as I was, at how much more there is to see, to feel, to remember. And you might find that those 5 quiet minutes can change not just your day, but your whole outlook on life. That's what happened to me. And in those small, simple moments, I finally discovered the peace I'd been seeking all along. Section 3. Folding the laundry fully. If someone had told me years ago that folding laundry would become one of the most meaningful rituals of my retirement, I would have laughed. For most of my life, laundry was simply another task on the endless to-do list. It was a chore that signaled duty, repetition, and the constant cycle of everyday living. Wash, dry, fold, put away, and then do it all over again a week later. It was something I'd rush through, barely paying attention, already thinking about what I needed to cook for dinner or the calls I needed to make. But in the months after I retired, as the pace of my days slowed and the world seemed to grow quieter, laundry began to take on a new shape. It started one afternoon when I stood in the laundry room, a basket of warm clothes at my feet, the air thick with the scent of clean cotton and fabric softener. For once, I had nowhere to be. No meetings, no deadlines, no reason to hurry. I looked down at the pile of towels, t-shirts, and socks, and instead of diving in and rushing through, I paused. I let myself just stand there for a moment, feeling the gentle heat rising from the clothes, the softness of well-worn fabrics under my hands. It's amazing what you notice when you're not in a rush. As I picked up a towel, a faded blue one, edges fraying from years of use, I thought about the hundreds of times it had dried the faces and hands of the people I love. Some t-shirts once belonged to my kids, now grown and living lives of their own, each one still holding a trace of laughter, grass stains, or the faintest whiff of their favorite perfume or cologne. There were my husband's work socks, with that one stubborn hole I kept forgetting to mend, and my pajama top, soft as a whisper, a comfort on sleepless nights. Each item in that basket was a piece of our family's story. Folding them wasn't just about tidiness or routine. It was, in its humble way, an act of care, a quiet honoring of the lives we have built together, the seasons we have weathered side by side. I found myself folding more slowly than usual, smoothing out the wrinkles, matching socks with a gentle smile, and stacking shirts into careful piles. There was a rhythm to it, almost meditative. The swish of the fabric, the gentle creak of the laundry room floor, the sunlight slanting through the high window. All these ordinary details began to feel extraordinary. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 2 below to let me know that you are still here with me. I realized that for so many years, I'd been missing these moments. Life had felt like a race, every day a sprint to keep up with all the things that needed doing. And in that race, the little rituals, the folding of a favorite shirt, the scent of warm towels, the simple satisfaction of neat stacks, got lost. I was always looking ahead to the next thing, measuring my worth in tasks accomplished and boxes checked. I never thought to measure my life in the slow, steady acts of love that make a house a home. As I folded, I found my mind drifting, not to worries or regrets, but to memories. I thought about the days when my children were small, when a load of laundry meant an afternoon of chasing socks across the living room or wrestling pillowcases into submission. I remembered summer evenings, the windows open, the breeze carrying the sound of laughter, and the clink of ice in glasses. I remembered my mother, standing at her laundry line, hands skilled and sure, humming as she worked. It struck me how much of life's meaning is woven into the fabric of these routines. One day, my grandson came over for a visit. As he ran in circles around the house, he stopped at the laundry basket and tugged out a shirt he'd left behind. "This smells like your house, Grandma," he said, pressing it to his face. At that moment, I realized that laundry is more than just a task. It's a kind of legacy, a way of passing on comfort, security, and love. The smell of clean clothes, the feel of a familiar towel, the sight of a neatly folded shirt, these are the little anchors that remind us where we belong. There's a certain dignity in caring for the small things. It's not glamorous, and no one is going to give you an award for folding the perfect stack of towels. But there is beauty in presence, in showing up fully even for the most mundane moments. As I folded that afternoon, I began to notice how my hands moved almost automatically, the gestures learned over years and years of repetition. I felt connected to every woman in my family who had ever stood in front of a basket of laundry, quietly keeping the world turning. With each piece I folded, I offered a silent blessing, gratitude for the loved ones who wore these clothes, hope that their days would be gentle, a wish for simple happiness. The laundry room, so often a place of hurried tasks, became a kind of sanctuary. It was a space where I could just be, unhurried and unneeded, free to remember and to dream. And in the quiet of that room, I began to reflect on the nature of care. How so much of what we do, especially as women, is invisible. The meals cooked, the floors swept, the countless small kindnesses that no one sees. These acts aren't about recognition or praise. They're about love, a steady, reliable love that endures, even as the world changes around us. Folding laundry is a reminder that showing up for others, and ourselves, doesn't always require grand gestures. Sometimes, it's enough to tend gently to the little things. I started to carry that lesson beyond the laundry room. I slowed down in other parts of my life, pouring coffee in the morning, watering the garden, brushing my hair. I found a kind of freedom in letting go of the pressure to always be busy, to always be achieving. I learned to savor the quiet spaces, to breathe in the ordinary moments and let them fill me up. Retirement, I discovered, isn't just about leisure or travel or finally getting to all the things you never had time for. Sometimes, it's about coming home to yourself, right where you are. Of course, not every day is poetic. Some days the laundry piles up and the dog tracks mud across the floor, and I find myself wishing for a little more excitement. But even on the hard days, I've come to see the value in the small things. A neatly folded stack of shirts can be an act of hope, a way of saying, I'm here. I care. Life goes on, one ordinary moment at a time. Now, when I carry a basket of laundry through the house, I do it with intention. I notice the weight of the clothes, the colors, the textures. I let my mind wander, sometimes to the past, sometimes to the future. I think about my family, scattered across towns and states, and hope that wherever they are, they feel the warmth of home in their ways. Sometimes, as I place a freshly folded towel on the shelf, I whisper a little prayer, for health, for happiness, for the courage to keep showing up for the people I love. In these quiet moments, I am reminded that there is a sacredness in the ordinary. Folding laundry isn't about perfection or efficiency. It's about presence. It's about remembering that every day, no matter how small, holds opportunities for love, gratitude, and peace. We don't have to search for meaning in faraway places or big accomplishments. Sometimes, meaning finds us in a warm towel, in the smell of clean sheets, in the gentle rhythm of caring for what we have. So if you ever find yourself rushing through the chores, feeling restless or unfulfilled, I invite you to slow down. Pay attention to the small things. Let yourself be present. There's so much life woven into these simple routines, so many memories, so much love. The world may not notice, but your heart will. And in the end, that's what truly matters. Section 4. Walking without a phone. There was a morning, not long ago, when I reached for my phone as I was about to head out for a walk, just like I had done hundreds of times before. It had become such a habit that I barely noticed it anymore. The familiar feel of the phone's cool surface in my hand, the automatic check for messages and emails, and the endless stream of notifications waiting for me. Keys, phone, maybe headphones. These had become as routine as putting on my shoes. But on this particular morning, something made me pause. I looked down at the phone, the screen bright with buzzing alerts, and suddenly it felt heavy, like a burden I didn't want to carry. Without thinking too much, I left it on the kitchen counter and stepped outside, feeling a strange light as I closed the door behind me. It was as if the world had suddenly given me a gift, a chance to step out not just into fresh air, but into stillness. I started walking, my feet moving over the familiar sidewalk, past the same houses and trees I'd seen countless times. Usually, my ears would be filled with music, a podcast, or the soft chatter of a phone call, but this time there was only the quiet rhythm of my footsteps. The air was crisp and cool, carrying with it the subtle sense of the neighborhood, the earthy smell of pine from the big tree on the corner, the faint aroma of someone cooking breakfast down the street, the fresh-cut grass lingering from an early morning mow. Without my phone as a distraction, I began to notice things I'd never really seen before. The way sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting dappled patterns on the pavement. The cracks in the sidewalk, worn smooth by years of footsteps and weather. The gentle sway of branches in the breeze, like a slow, whispered conversation between trees. I reached out and touched the rough bark of a nearby tree, feeling its solid presence beneath my fingers. It grounded me in a way I hadn't expected. Birdsong filled the air, a chorus of different calls, high and low, weaving together in a natural symphony. For a moment, I tried to name the birds, but the sounds were just voices, beautiful and familiar, a reminder that life continued all around me, whether or not I was plugged into it. A neighbor waved from her porch, and instead of glancing down at my phone or nodding distractedly, I raised my hand and smiled back, feeling a genuine connection. That simple exchange felt like a small but powerful moment of belonging. It reminded me that, despite all the technology that often divides us, the world is still full of real people, real smiles, and real moments. As I walked, I became aware of the sound of my breathing and the steady pace of my steps. There was no rush, no agenda. Just me, moving through the neighborhood with open senses and an open heart. I started to think of this as my 5-sense walk, a way to bring myself back to the present, to feel alive in a world that often moves too fast. I looked closely at the colors around me, the green of the lawns, the red of a mailbox, the soft gray of the clouds overhead. I listened deeply, not just to birds but to distant cars, the rustle of leaves, and the occasional bark of a dog. I smelled the air, fresh, earthy, sometimes tinged with the scent of bacon frying or coffee brewing. I touched the fence post as I passed, rough and worn but solid and reassuring. Even taste found its way in, as I sometimes carried a thermos of coffee and took slow, deliberate sips, savoring the warmth and flavor as a small pleasure along the route. Without my phone, I was fully present. Not distracted by messages or the news, not caught in the spiral of worries or plans. I was simply where my feet were, seeing the world as it was, not filtered through a screen or measured by minutes. It was a gift I hadn't realized I was missing. At first, it felt strange. I missed the background noise and the sense of connection to the wider world. I worried I might be bored or lonely without my usual distractions. But what I discovered was quite the opposite. I found a calmness that settled into my bones, a softness in my thoughts, and a quiet joy in noticing the small miracles of everyday life. Some days the weather wasn't perfect. Sometimes clouds hid the sun, or the wind chilled my face. Other days my mind wandered away from the walk, drifting to old worries or future tasks. And that was okay. The practice wasn't about perfection or escaping life's troubles. It was about permitting myself to come back, to be here now for just a little while. Over time, these walks became a lifeline. They softened the edges of difficult days and strengthened my resilience. They reminded me that the pace of the world isn't the same as the pace of my soul. That slowing down doesn't mean stopping. It means finding harmony between the two. I started leaving my phone behind more and more, sometimes every other morning, sometimes just for a few blocks. Each time I stepped outside without it, I felt a little freer, a little more connected, to nature, to my neighbors, and most importantly, to myself. Walking without a phone became a practice of presence, a way to honor my senses and my spirit. It taught me that the world is still beautiful and full of wonder, even in the middle of an ordinary neighborhood on an ordinary day. That peace and connection are waiting, not out there in the digital noise, but right here, where my feet meet the earth and my heart opens to the simple gifts of life. So, if you're feeling overwhelmed by the constant buzz of technology or disconnected from the world around you, I encourage you to try it. One walk, no phone, just your senses. Look closely, listen deeply, breathe fully, and let the world meet you where you are. You might be surprised by what you find, not just outside, but inside. A little calm, a little joy, a little peace. And maybe, like me, you'll come to cherish those moments as some of the most meaningful of your days. Section 5. One unexpected phone call. Sometimes, life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it, through moments that seem small but carry the power to change everything. For me, one of those moments came in the form of an unexpected phone call, one that reminded me how deeply connection matters, no matter how many years have passed or miles separate us. It was a quiet afternoon, the kind that stretched out slowly with nothing pressing on the calendar. I was sitting at my kitchen table, sipping a cup of tea, when a little voice inside my head whispered, "Call him." The voice wasn't loud or insistent, but it was enough to make me pause. It had been over 2 years since I'd last spoken to Mike. Life, as it often does, has pulled us in different directions. Work, family, routines, they all built invisible walls between us, walls made not of anger or hurt, but of simply losing touch. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 3 below to let me know that you are still here with me. For a moment, I hesitated. What if it was awkward? What if he didn't want to talk? What if I was bothering him? Those doubts swirled in my mind, but the feeling that I needed to reach out won out. I picked up my phone and hovered my finger over his name. I took a deep breath and pressed the call. The phone rang 3 times before he answered, his voice a little slower, a little older, but unmistakably his. "Hello," he said, sounding unsure. I smiled even though he couldn't see me. "Hey, it's me. I was just thinking about you." There was a long pause, and then he laughed, a short, surprised laugh that said more than words could. "Well, I'll be damned," he said. And just like that, it felt like no time had passed at all. We slipped back into an easy conversation, the kind that comes from years of shared history and friendship. We talked for over an hour, not about anything monumental, but about the little things that make up a life. His knees were bothering him, as they often did this time of year. My tomatoes hadn't grown well in the garden. His daughter was expecting her first child, a new chapter unfolding. My grandson had lost his first tooth and was endlessly fascinated by the gap it left behind. We laughed at memories from old camping trips, the time we got caught in a storm on the lake, and the way his father used to fry eggs in bacon grease until the pan smoked. None of it was extraordinary, but it felt like coming home. That call reminded me how much I'd missed being truly seen. The way Mike knew me, not just as I am now, but as the person I used to be. The mistakes, the triumphs, the dreams and doubts that had shaped me over the years. It's a kind of knowing that doesn't fade with time. It waits quietly beneath the surface, ready to be rekindled. When we hung up, the house felt warmer somehow. The silence wasn't empty. It was softer, more comforting. I hadn't solved any problems or fixed any lingering worries. I had just reached out. But that simple act lifted a weight I hadn't fully realized I was carrying. That night, I thought about all the people I cared about but hadn't spoken to in a while. Not because we weren't friends, but because life had gotten busy. I'd told myself it was normal to drift apart, that people move on. But maybe, I realized, we just forget how much we matter to each other until something reminds us. The next morning, inspired by that phone call, I sent a text to another old friend I hadn't seen since my last job. It was simple. Just thinking of you. Hope you're well. The reply came quickly, with a smiley face and a message saying, "That made my day." It was a small exchange, but it meant the world. From that day on, I started a little habit, reaching out to one person each day. Sometimes it was a quick phone call, other times a text or even an email. Nothing grand, no long conversations or special occasions. Just a moment to say, "You're on my mind," or "Thank you for being in my life." This daily act of connection changed how I felt about my days. It reminded me that no matter how quiet life gets, we are woven into each other's stories. We still belong somewhere. We live in an age where we can message hundreds of people in an instant, yet often forget to truly connect with just one. Real connection isn't about emojis or quick replies. It's about moments of sincerity, a voice on the other end that says, "I thought of you today." A laugh that picks up exactly where it left off years ago. The reassurance that you are not forgotten, that you still matter, and that someone remembers who you were and who you are. So if there's someone who's been on your mind lately, I encourage you not to wait. Don't overthink it. You don't need the perfect words or a big excuse. Just take a few seconds of courage and reach out. You never know what might come from it. A smile, a laugh, a memory, maybe even a door opening again. Mike and I still talk now, not every day or even every week, but often enough to keep the thread between us strong and steady. That one unexpected call softened the edges of my loneliness, reminded me of the power of human connection, and gave me hope that even in quiet times, we are never truly alone. In the strange and beautiful tapestry of life, sometimes all it takes is one simple phone call and a few heartfelt words, "I was thinking of you." As the sun settles slowly on another quiet Sunday morning, I find myself sitting by the window with a warm cup of coffee, watching the world move at its gentle pace. In moments like these, the noise of the past, the worries of the future, all of it fades away. What remains is a simple truth I've come to cherish. Enough. Enough is not about having it all or ticking off endless goals. It's about recognizing the beauty in the ordinary. The worn slippers by the door, the sound of rain tapping softly on the roof, and the smell of an old book in the afternoon light. I once chased after more achievements, more plans, more distractions, thinking that happiness lived somewhere just beyond the next hill. But now I know that happiness lives here, in these small moments we often overlook. It lives in the warmth of a smile from a loved one, in the peaceful pause of a slow morning, in the quiet presence of simply being. So I made a list, not of dreams or destinations, but of things that already fill my heart. Sitting on the porch with my dog, watering the garden slowly, listening to an old vinyl album uninterrupted, these simple joys remind me daily that life doesn't have to be complicated to be rich. If you're feeling restless or searching for meaning, I invite you to create your own enough list. Let it ground you. Let it remind you that peace and fulfillment are not distant prizes but quiet gifts we can open every day. You deserve to feel this peace. You deserve to know that, just as you are enough.